The commission staff says it's still working on a final version of the power company case. Last month, Alabama Power agreed to a settlement of $73,400,000 rate increase. But when a deadline came around to accept or reject the proposal, the commission sought further study. The power company then withdrew from the agreement that had been worked out. The commission must make its decision by July 28th, or the whole $123 million increase will go into effect automatically. In matters before the commission, the Utilities Division went over the Public Utility Regulatory Policies Act. Some of the staff recommendations presented by Bob Reed encourages an electric utility to send consumers clear and concise explanations of rate schedules. It also contends that the power company to send a reminder to the consumers when seasonal rates are to go into effect. The staff contends that each consumer's rate in dollars and cents should be shown on each bill. A practice, according to the utility, would be cumbersome. The staff also recommended no electric or gas service should be terminated unless reasonable prior notice is given to a consumer. Service should not be terminated when it would be dangerous to health or a customer is able to pay on installments. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Speaking for the group, State Representative Alvin Holmes says the number of blacks in faculty and administrative positions does not reflect the racial makeup of the school system's enrollment. Holmes says the Board of Education still operates under the mandates of a 1963 federal court decision that allows that race may be a factor in the assigning of administrative personnel to overcome the effects of past racial discrimination. He says while 52% of county students are black, 60% of their instructors are white. And Holmes says currently there's only one black assistant superintendent.
So we feel that insofar as that the majority of the students in the public schools in Montgomery County black students, that we should have, if they have the superintendent's white, in which Mr. Adair is a fine individual, and I have nothing against him. But I think it's no more than right and fair, and this is what we feel, that they have an associate superintendent who's black.
The group also asked for at least 2 more black assistant superintendents and blacks appointed to administrative and core positions in numbers matching the black-white ratio in the entire county system. In response to this, new school superintendent Henry Adair says the board has always tried to conform to the spirit and letter of the law and says he's sure the board will be objective and fair in filling this position. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
So you're saying any action?
After conferring with the governor, Finance Director Sid McDonald revealed that the state's education revenue will be down $48 million from the anticipated income.
For the first 9 months of this fiscal year, the Education Trust Fund had an annual growth rate of 7.7%, down from the 11.5% needed to maintain full funding. Because of that, the state will only be able to give local schools and colleges 84% of budgeted funds. The shortage amounts to an annual proration of 4.2% or 16% for the next 3 months. Schools will receive all their allotted money for June.
The biggest reason for the low revenue is the drop in sales tax income. The money collected for June of this year is only $200,000 more than June of last year. That represents a 0.5% growth rate compared to the expected 12% growth rate. Income tax revenue also dropped drastically, only $4.4 million in June this year compared to $9 million in June 1979. And McDonald says that 4.2% figure could go higher before the fiscal year ends.
We all know that there is very little that's healthy about the economy right now. We frankly believe that the leveling out of sales tax that we're experiencing this month and last month will be with us into at least the first quarter of the next fiscal year, which begins October the 1st. We're not in any way anxious about it, but there is little reason to be very optimistic that the rate of growth is going to be very encouraging.
McDonald hopes the state's economy remains stable because he says if there are any changes, they will probably be for the worse. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
I think it was the best figure that the Finance Department could recommend to the governor at this time. The figure's based on the fact that the income the rest of the year would be the same percentage it was the first 9 months. I hope that's true. However, I think the economic signs indicate that we may have a little worse proration than that figure.
At this point, it's my understanding that every effort will be made not to prorate any salaries. Of course, all those salaries are now obligations that were incurred during the past school year. Of course, we'll have to report to the superintendent and the board for some final decisions as to what we'll have to do. But I feel confident that salaries will not be involved.
If Judge Varner does order more county prisoners released, it will be the third time he has done so to keep the number of inmates under the 120 maximum. Today there were 150 inmates in the jail. Varner has repeatedly warned the Montgomery County Commission to find a permanent solution to the overcrowding, which is why the county law library is being moved from its place on the 4th floor of the county courthouse. The books will be housed in Tumbling Waters Museum, while the old library space will become an addition to the jail. But attorney Richard Schinbaum, representing the inmates, says the estimated 25 beds that will go in the law library is obsolete before it's even started. An attorney for the commission says the law library shows the commissioners are acting in good faith, but Schinbaum claims the library is just a stopgap until after this fall's election, when the problem will face a new commission. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Acting Chief Jim Sutherland is the new fire chief. He was approved today when 7 council members voted for him. Donald Watkins, whose dissenting vote last week carried the nomination over until today, abstained. District 2 Councilman Joe Reed was absent. Watkins says he's not opposed to Sutherland being named fire chief, but rather he's concerned that the city has no black department heads and no blacks were nominated for the fire chief's job. Mayor Farmer responded to Watkins by saying there were no blacks eligible for this particular position, and Farmer told the council he believes the city has made tremendous progress toward training and appointing blacks for higher positions. In other business, the mayor presented the results of the curbside garbage collection survey in several test areas of the city. 3 months ago, the large green garbage cans went out for use to test the new system. Later, residents filled out survey cards on how they liked or disliked the service. The mayor says although there are some problems to be overcome in the future, the majority of the residents approved the new type of pickup service, which could save the city $1 million a year. Now all the mayor is waiting for is the council's permission to find financing for the program. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Some of the group attending the first of 2 meetings were classified by the group's chairman, Sid McDonald, as the non-education members who were informed on the group's mission. The 13-member task force is expected to come up with some recommendations to present to the legislature in the next few months. McDonald told the morning meeting that some growth in education came as the result of political rather than education discussions. He claims the excess of politics in education hurts. When the advisor group was appointed, Governor Fob James said no specific area of higher education will be left out of the group's review. the heads of some post-secondary institutions and some other officials from education, and Governor James came together for an afternoon session. Justifying another closed meeting, McDonald says the group adopted a resolution to close the meetings, and the ad hoc group does not come under the open meeting law.
And we are not, therefore, a public body. We stand in the same respect to the governor as does his staff. Such meetings between the staff and the governor are not subject to the public meeting rule and law.
Governor, could I ask you a few moments?
I think we're really wasting time now. These good citizens from all over the state, they've come down here to perform a service at no charge to the state. It's time to stop this monkey business and let them get on with the job at hand.
Governor James says the formation of the task force is a good starting place to cope with post-secondary education. If it's unsuccessful, he says, the next stop is an out-of-state group to pass judgment. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Nominations for the Vice President, this distinguished board.
I nominate Dr. Harold C. Martin.
I'll second that.
That's the gentleman.
With the crisis in finances, and we just gonna open up an old year motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, now we come to,
in my mind, but the question is still, and the respective fields, and he indicated that they would be taking since, and at this time, their game's down just a few the last few weeks. And
we have already okayed the other, now application was not considered. That's the only statement that I want to make. But I would like you two people to make a statement.
Well, as you say, it has been a work with Dr. Hodges for the coming year.
We have Dr. Virginia Horns, who has had extensive.
now, who are the doctoral level people in gifted education?
VSB, and has for 5 years, and we have Dr. Catherine.
Back on. What is this on about? It's on not having.
Correct. That's about correct.
I would guess that'd be true.
I was reading it last week, reading about education on vacation a little bit. Is it true that between 60 and 70% of our master's degrees in Alabama are in education, and between 20 and 30% average all other states?
This has been a very long process, and I'd like for Dr. Tigg also to make a statement.
Selection and honestly, the board,
I want to express my appreciation to you for this honor and this opportunity. I do consider it an honor to serve as a member of this very effective team. I look forward to serving.
It was 4:30 in the morning when the truck hit a cow, ran into a bridge, and burst into flames on the bank of Bear Creek, about 25 miles west of Selma. It was carrying containers of phosphorus pentasulfide, a chemical in powder form to be mixed with liquid and used as a fertilizer. Some of the canisters ruptured, spilling into the nearly dry creek bed and catching on fire. When mixed with water, the chemicals formed hydrogen sulfide, a poisonous gas. Apparently, firefighters who arrived early in the morning put water and foam on the wreck, and that made the chemicals more toxic. It wasn't until the afternoon that a representative from the chemical firm came and said that the best move was to put sand on the spill. But before a Stauffer chemical man arrived, sheriff's deputies and state troopers had moved 55 families from their homes. As winds shifted, authorities had to move back and widen the evacuation area. At one time, the smell of sulfur drifted as far as Safford, 3 miles away. At least 17 rescuers and motorists inhaled too much of the gas and were treated at 2 area hospitals. 11 were admitted, including one trooper who's listed in satisfactory condition with respiratory problems. In addition to the fumes, troopers say there was some danger of explosion, so it was several hours before workers could get close enough to shovel sand on the flames. Meanwhile, residents waited until they could get back into their homes. The toxicity of the creek hasn't been determined yet, but one cattleman expressed concern that his 500 head might be poisoned because they usually drink from the small creek. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Dallas County. good turnout. That's good.
It simply means that most of them will delay maintenance work on buildings, maybe school buses, and other kinds of expenditures that can be prorated. It's my opinion that salaries will not be prorated because these are contracts, and I think the state and local boards who contract with people to deliver a certain amount of money should live up to that contract.
The truck was carrying canisters of phosphorus pentasulfide when it hit a cow, rammed a bridge, and caught on fire. The ruptured canisters and fire were dangerous, but Civil Defense Director Warren Rhodes says most of the problem was caused by firefighters who sprayed water and foam on the fire. The water mixed with the chemicals to form a cloud of hydrogen sulfide. That deadly gas billowed from the wreck all day. 2 area hospitals report they treated 22 persons who became ill after breathing the toxic fumes. Rhodes says the incident shows how important it is that firefighters learn to deal with hazardous materials. He points out that just 3 weeks ago in Selma, there was a class on handling dangerous substances, and only 9 firefighters and police attended. He hopes attendance will be higher at the next class. Meanwhile, all 55 families moved out of the area have returned to their homes. A cattle rancher has moved his herd away from the site, and Assistant Fire Chief E.W. Hall says workers will dig up the ground in and around Bear Creek and carry it to a dump site near Butler. There were reports that some cattle had died from the fumes, but a rancher and a sheriff's deputy say the reports are false. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Pensions and Security Commissioner Gary Cooper says thousands of people, including those refugees, are eligible for Medicaid because they meet the requirements to be on pensions and security rolls. But he says the department wants to create incentives to work programs in an effort to reduce welfare rolls.
In the department, we want to do the same thing that the committee wants to do. And basically, we would like any able-bodied person who can work to work, and to get every individual who cheats and lies off of our rolls. And we plan on cooperating fully with the committee and continuing to work on recommendations.
W.H. Hoke Kearns, the director of Alabama's Medical Services, says costs per category of care under Medicaid are running close to budget projections. He says 5 of 7 Medicaid bills passed by the 1980 legislature have been implemented. A $2 copay for medical services is under a court restraining order. The other, that requires picture identification of some recipients, is being worked out. Curran says the federal government will provide matching funds for Cuban and Haitian refugees who are eligible for Medicaid benefits under state standards, but he says his department has not budgeted for this.
We have, as you know, no dollars budgeted to accommodate. If we have an influx of these refugees into Alabama, and Commissioner Cooper and his staff subsequently have to find them eligible under the current plan, then we'll have to find some way to accommodate their needs through Medicaid.
The 8-member Legislative Interim Committee will meet again after some of its members attend a July 30th meeting in Washington on Medicaid. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Sleeping sickness in horses is a highly fatal viral infection for which there's no effective treatment. The disease is transmitted by mosquitoes and affects the horse's nervous system. Normally, outbreaks of the disease don't show up until August, when the mosquito season is at its peak. But so far, there are 2 confirmed cases, both near Mobile. Last year, there were no reported cases of the disease. Because of this, veterinarian for the Alabama Extension Service, Dr. Harold Kerr, says there's a greater chance the disease may reach epidemic proportions this year. Dr. Kerr says there's no reason for alarm, but horse owners should be aware that the only preventive measure is to have the horse immunized as soon as possible. He says the vaccine is readily available from any veterinarian and immunity lasts for 1 year. Meanwhile, Dr. Kerr says horse owners should watch for symptoms in their animals, which include drowsiness, grinding of teeth, walking in circles, or a drooping lower lip. He says anyone who suspects his horse may have the disease should contact the veterinarian immediately, along with the state veterinarian office or the Auburn lab. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
One of the fastest ways to get money when you're broke is to pawn something of value. And a lot of people are doing just that these days. Some you might not expect.
And what are they pawning? Anything and everything, from diamond rings to guns to televisions and stereos, and even automobiles. Anything for cash.
We get people really from all different classes, all different occupations. Just no limit anymore. Just a little bit of everybody.
Frank Evans manages only one of 6 different pawn shops which operate in the city. His rate of interest is 20% on 30-day loans on items for pawn, which sounds a bit high when compared to 14% charged by banks. But banks require a good credit rating and substantial collateral, and even then there's still some red tape. Evans says the hottest items for pawn are guns and jewelry, which he has plenty of. He says the first of each month is his busiest time because that's usually when most people need money to pay bills. Evans says he believes shops like his provide a much-needed service, especially during bad economic periods. And although you might not think of a pawn shop the next time you need a loan, there are lots of people who will. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
A closed-door executive session preceded the regular administrative meeting. Commission members presumably discussed candidates up for the executive director's job. According to acting executive director Luther Hall, the field has been narrowed to 2 applicants, and a decision may be forthcoming. As the executive session ended, talk turned to internal administrative matters. The PSC will have an operating budget of $3.5 million when it begins its new fiscal year in October, but it was noted during the meeting that department projections exceeded the budget by some $318,000. So commission members discussed necessary changes to keep within the budget. PSC President Jimmy Sanford said the commission will have to continue its own credit crunch until new revenue comes in. Vacancies are numerous within the PSC. There are 28 job openings, and filling those vacant positions is one of the Commission's top priorities.
We see a considerable increase in the number of the technical sorts of analytical people and engineering people. It will be pointed towards the utilities area.
Hall says it's difficult to adequately fill such technical positions quickly, but he's optimistic the vacancies will be filled by October. Sidney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
Is the largest.
It's kind of quiet now around here, but come Friday, 200 of the South's finest amateur golfers will converge here on the Montgomery Country Club grounds for the annual invitational tournament. There's been a lot of work done on the course itself in preparation for the annual event, and that work began months ago.
They're cutting the grass about every day. The fairways have finally turned real nice. Of course, ought to be probably the best shape it's ever been in for this tournament.
The greens are looking real good too. You
greens are close to perfect. We had a little trouble with 2 greens, and they've came on real well. So greens are just close to perfect. Sure are.
When you set out for the tournament, you design the course, the pin placements. What do you have in mind?
Well, we're not going to do anything to trick up the golf course. The golf course will be played as is. We think it's a good golf course. We'll have the formula that's used by the USGA, which is we'll try to put 6 pretty tough holes, 6 medium holes, and 6 easy holes. And these will be adjusted and changed every day, where the course will have a different look every day, but it'll really play basically the same way.
You've made it a little more difficult around the greens, hadn't you? That's something new you stuck in there.
Yeah, they've got a little high fringe around the greens this time, which will make for a different kind of shot. You don't find that in this part of the country very often, and although it's got its good points, it keeps those shots that hit on the edge of the greens from going off in the sand traps. It also leaves you with a tough little chip shot out of an 1.5 inch cut, which is pretty tricky. Ought to be interesting to watch the boys play.
When the first group tees off on Friday, the pace will no doubt quicken around here. Most of the work that's been done will all have to be done over again, only at night or early in the morning. There'll probably be a few prayers said, prayers for no rain. Tournament officials just don't even like to talk about it. From the Montgomery Country Club, Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
And when you think of the hundreds of thousands of American citizens that like football and baseball and all of these things, and here in Alabama, we will have a focal centerpiece of motorsports, motorcycles, automobiles, boats, and all that goes with it.
One of the first who has been a real asset to this committee.
Tell her to call me at the station between now and, say, 5:30. She can. You know where I can get a hold of her? Let me give you a number at home where she can reach me. You write down? 288.
We will have vehicles ultimately in there from every facet of motorsports, and it'll be a collection like doesn't exist anyplace else. And we will have one-of-a-kind vehicles too, some that were just special purpose vehicles for particular aspects. It's going to be a broad spectrum of the motorsports world. And I think unique, and we're going to, well, you just give us a little time. Everybody in the state's going to be proud of what we're doing when it's all done.
One of the lowest cost ways to preserve fruits and vegetables at home is to sun-dry them. Now, there's several ways to do that, but we're going to show you the easiest way to sun-dry fruits.
Ripe, firm fruit works best. Just prepare it by washing, peeling, and coring it. Because fruits tend to darken during drying and storage, it needs to be pre-treated. We selected the easiest method, steam blanching. You need 1.5 to 2 inches of water in a saucepan. Use a colander or a basket to hold the fruit. Place the fruit loosely inside, not more than an inch deep, and bring the water to a boil. Then place a tight-fitting lid on top. Cook it until it's still firm but done. While the fruit is steaming, you can prepare for sun-drying. The method we chose is simple. Cover heavy cardboard with aluminum foil. Then place the pre-treated fruit one layer deep. It's a good idea to start drying by 9 a.m. on a day when temperatures will reach 90 to 100 degrees around lunchtime. The humidity needs to be less than 60%, so pick a hot, dry day. Once you've picked a suitable place outside, any table should do. Cover the fruit with a clean, thin cloth, making sure the cloth doesn't touch the fruit. We used an old sheet. Weigh the cloth down so that insects can't get underneath and lay eggs on the fruit. The whole drying process should take 2 days. While the fruit's out, you should turn each piece over every 2 hours or so to speed up the drying process. The fruit should be brought in at night and put out the next day to finish drying. If the humidity is higher than 60% or if it should rain, you can finish drying the fruit in a slow oven. Sun-dried fruit is tasty, it's economical, and fun to do. The Albany Extension Service has more information on drying fruits and vegetables.
Some people like to sun-dry fruit in their car. You prepare it the same way, put it above the back seat in your car, make sure the windows are rolled up and that there are no insects inside. Park in a sunny spot. You can do it while you're at work. Just remember to turn it over every 2 hours. This is Coping, and I'm Ivy Berman.
6 questions were posed to the State Ethics Commission, each setting up hypothetical situations involving lobbyists, political candidates, both incumbent and challenging, and their campaign contributions. In the opinions proposed to the Commission, the lobbyist can serve as Secretary-Treasurer for a political action committee, or PAC, which many times is a way corporations pool their political contributions, and he or she can only make contributions before an election, as long as there is an understanding that the candidate isn't being influenced by the contribution. The only provision stopping such a contribution would be if it went to an incumbent candidate who currently sits on a board which regulates a business with which the lobbyist is associated. Commission Executive Director Melvin Cooper says the proposed opinions draw very fine lines in what he calls a gray zone of the Commission's powers. Before any vote is taken on the proposed opinions, the Commission says it wants to hear from those who would be affected by the decision. A public hearing will be held next month to provide an outlet for anyone who has strong feelings on the issue. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Most kids wouldn't be too interested in giving up almost a third of their summer vacation just to sit in a classroom to learn about computers. But that's exactly what these kids are doing. These students, ranging in ages from 12 to 17, are attending a 3-week summer course at Auburn University at Montgomery.
The purpose is to acquaint the young people with the vocation of computing. We have is one of the fields that is going to be a great deal of people needed in the future, and the state of the art is that if you are familiar with them, you seem to be comfortable enough to program them and earn a living doing it.
Dr. Remco says most of his students are of average intelligence and are quite enthusiastic.
My dad took this course and wanted me to take it.
What do you hope to learn by taking this course?
Become a computer operator.
How do you think learning about computers will be a benefit to you in the future?
Well, nowadays and in the future, they're going to use a lot more computers, and if you learn about them now, you'll have an advantage on the people that would learn them in college.
What do you like about computers?
Well, they're very fun. On these computers, we have games, and they're fun to play.
When they finish the course, the students will receive certificates and will be one step closer to being prepared for a highly computerized world of the future. From the campus of AUM, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Studies indicate that a child who eats breakfast before going to school performs better, but not all children get the chance to eat early in the morning, and that's why the program was instituted. All public and private schools are eligible for the program, and it works on the same principle as school lunches. Students receive either a free, reduced price, or full price breakfast based on family income guidelines, and the federal government reimburses schools for every breakfast served. 53% of the schools statewide are participating, but only 16 of the 46 schools in Montgomery County are involved.
We've gotten many excuses. Some principals feel that they would have to change their bus schedules 30 or 40 minutes, but that's not necessary. If 53% of the schools in Alabama can implement the program, why can't the rest of them do it?
Montgomery County school officials, however, say they're 100% in favor of the school breakfast program, but it's up to the schools to institute it. Director of Food Services Josephine Grissett says low participation, scheduling problems, and lack of supervision prevent schools from taking part in the program. In fact, some area schools that began the program had to stop because of low participation. But she says the option is there for any school that wants to serve breakfast. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
At one time, Boris Shine was one of Russia's foremost mathematicians, but he was fired when he applied for a visa to leave the country. Now he's a distinguished professor of math at a college in Arkansas. Shine was in Montgomery to speak on the hardships of Russian life. His visit marks a very significant occasion. Exactly 6 months ago, Shine, his wife, and young daughter began their new life in the U.S. Shine described conditions in Russia as terribly oppressed, and he says he had to leave his native country for the sake of his child.
And she started to ask questions, so I had an option either to lie to my own child or, well, you know, if I'll tell her truth, well, what I think to be truth, that would be too dangerous for, you know, a child. She was 10. She wouldn't know what it was possible to say openly and what not, and we could be arrested just for...
Shine says the Soviet Union is only democratic on paper, but in real life, the citizens can't speak openly, there are no public meetings, and all literature is subject to strict censorship. Shine hopes to apply for American citizenship in 5 years, but for now, he's just very grateful to the Americans and Alabamians who wouldn't let Russian authorities forget his cause. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
About 72 local farmers took part in today's Farm Market Day. That's 75% of the original number who had signed up. The recent dry spell has caused many farmers to lose a good bit of their vegetable crops. A large number decided to come anyway, with several farmers bringing only half of what they expected. These problems were passed on to today's consumers in the form of higher prices for just about everything. The more expensive items this year are peas and lima beans. They were hit hardest during this dry season. Last year, beans sold for $12 a bushel. This year, the price has risen to as much as $18. But area consumers didn't seem to mind. In fact, most farmers sold out before noon. Then there were some items that seemed to thrive on this dry weather. One peach farmer I talked with says the dry weather has made his peaches get ripe faster. He says his crop is bringing a better price this year and is selling better than he's seen in years. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
James created the narcotics unit in May of last year, placing it under the command of Captain Brady Taylor. He says the unit is working to stop the multi-million-dollar flow of illegal drug traffic into the state. Education was the governor's next item of concern. He says the results of the recent California Achievement Test given to Alabama school children shows the pupils in grades 4, 5, 6, and 8 are above the national average.
Without any reservations, what I'm going to tell you is a highlight to date of my 18 months in Montgomery, Alabama.
The scores for grades 1, 2, and 3 will be available in a couple of weeks. James and State Superintendent of Education Wayne Teague says the continuing improvement in test scores is due to hard work by teachers, by administrators, and the basic skills team. But Alabama is still near the bottom in spending per pupil.
The Alabama per pupil expenditure this past year we just closed was $1,500 per child. The Southeast average is $1,706 per child. The national average is $2,124. So, Governor, I say that is real accountability.
The test scores are improvements over last year by those pupils who scored 1 year or more below the national average. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Well, I was advised yesterday that we had gotten a notification from the NCAA that they're looking at some activity up there in 78, 79. And I'm vitally concerned with it. But I cannot comment on it because at this point we do not know specifically what the NCAA is concerned about. But this is very serious business, and I'm very worried about the fact that they're even making another observation down there.